think I spent like half an hour going, it was just working, and now it's not. And oh yeah, there's this URL in the bot service and it's changed and I haven't updated it. It's just
yes, of course. And then you need to take care of your own app registrations, and that just like it can be painful at times as well. But I don't know about you, Simon, but for me it is like I sometimes, or I might have sometimes, forgotten to just like copy that damn secret value, and then I navigated away, or my browser refreshed, and it's just like, okay, so let's have another secret, because I can't recover from that anymore. So the secret is not visible anymore to me, and just like things like that. And of course, there is a cure for that. So of course, you could either blame me and say, hey, Luise, you really need to learn how to copy that secret. But Teams Toolkit just like aims to streamline your development process and make it very, very easy for you, and just like reduce your setup time to just like to a really, really bare minimum. And I think we stopped that, right? So in preparation of this call, Simon prepped this and had the stopwatch right next to him. And I think just like to scaffold the entire bot, how long did it take you?
So to actually to scaffold it, just to get the project going, was 30 seconds. To actually get it up and running to something actually running, and you're presented with the install, like what we're going to see, was sort of about 3 or 4 minutes. And I have to say it's got faster since it's gone into GA, because the preview was a little bit slower, so that's even better now. It's really quick. And then the notification bots, the tab app is even faster because it has less to do. So it's great. And I love the good practices, because which we'll cover when we go through the demo. That's great, because I've done what it's trying to stop us to do in one of those. So and it's just taking some of that burden off you, isn't it, and just getting you up and running, so you can get on with the important stuff, which is that end result for your customer or for your users. So
and I feel like this is helping both juniors and more senior developers, because you don't need to worry at all anymore about all the different moving parts that needs to be involved, but can just like focus on what you really are good at, and that mostly is just like writing the app or writing the bots, instead of just like, I don't know, setting up 10 services so that they finally make up this Teams app.
Exactly. Oh, definitely. Right, should we move on to the introduction on what is a bot?
What is a bot? So as the slide says, we say bot or we say chat bot, but this is just like it's a machine who communicates with users through conversations and can take place in chats. And chats can include one-to-one chats, but also group chats. It can be in channels in Teams. It can be in a meeting in Teams. And it can be in a personal app in Teams. So this is just like, and all of these, of course, have different implications on what I need to have in my manifest file. And most of the time, if you're the one creating that manifest file manually, you mess up with something, or at least I messed up with something. So I never got it right at first try. Let's say it like that. So there was always just like something that I missed. I don't know. Something was not in the valid domains array, or I missed that this could also have been a meeting or whatever. So there's always something that we will forget. And yes, eventually we will get it right. But it is just like a good idea if we use something that makes it right, just like in the first place for me, so that we do not need to worry about that. And of course, that does not mean that we shouldn't read the outcome that is automatically generated for us. That does not mean that we should not educate ourselves and others about that to understand what this is doing. Because of course, lessons learned, it's always good to understand what was automatically scaffolded for you. But it just like means we get sooner to the point of writing the code for our app.
And people don't, you don't have the frustration of like, oh, why is it not working? Why is it not, that sort of is taken away from you, and then you can start off maybe with a one-to-one chat and then build up and sort of start to see how your bot becomes more and more useful as you add that functionality in those areas. So yeah, fantastic.
I mean, who never struggled with off?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh.
I mean, sitting in the glass house here, I shouldn't throw a stone. I feel that.
Yeah, I was going to say we've only got 40 minutes. I think if we just start talking about that'll be the 40 minutes up very, very quickly. But yeah, absolutely. But it's become much easier, and I think as we've all learned, and the community's helped, isn't it? The community helps establish the ways of working, what works well, what doesn't work well too, and then the toolkit takes a lot of those ideas as well and builds it into tooling, which benefits us all. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Simon, so introduce us to our scenario. So tell us, what are we going to build?
Okay, so imagine we've got a bot and it's being used by a support team. So we might have systems which the support engineer is looking after, and we want to alert the engineer when something's happening proactively. So maybe I don't know, the CPU of an app service is running high, or there's messages queuing up on a queue. So in our scenario, we've got as a member of support staff, we're an organization, we're using Microsoft Teams. We want to, rather than people getting emails, we want to use Teams so that they get notified. Those support members are sharing files and collaborating and having conversations within Microsoft Teams. And so in this scenario, we're going to create a bot which sends I find proactive, funny word, but proactive messages about any critical incidents, and these could be triggered by other systems, or it could come from anywhere really, and then it allows then the support engineer to kind of start asking questions about the ticket details, and we're going to sort of just do that initial step, but that's what we're going to build.
Yeah, so just to elaborate just like a little bit more on the proactive, because this is just like kind of a wording that you will experience a lot in the docs as well. So proactive just means, for everyone who's not super familiar with that term, that it is not a user triggering the bot by just like saying add bot, or whatever the name of the bot is, could you help me with this or that, but that the bot initiates the conversation with our user and the user responds to that conversation. And that of course has its implications on how we need to implement this, because we don't get just like a trigger from the user, but we get a trigger, I don't know, from an API or just like from an external system, and we get a signal. So, and then just like the bot initiates the conversation, needs to open that chat, and then our user can respond and ask smart questions.
Yeah, exactly, and that's it, isn't it? You'd much rather as a support person, you're fixing the problem before your users are telling you you've got a problem. That would be much nicer to do it that way. So yeah, cool. Okay, so so we're going to we're going to build this bot, and we're using the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, and the extension supplies several different app templates for building bots, and in this exercise we are using the Teams Toolkit version 5, and recently all the Learn modules have been updated for version 5, which is awesome. So well done to the Learn team for that. We can.
Which means if you have had a look at the Learn path, just like more than only a couple of days ago, then the Learn path only included version 4.2 something, and now that we have the new version available, the docs were updated, so it is really worth to revisit the docs as well and complete the Learn path again, because so much goodness coming. So I promise, so this is not over-promising, but I really fell in love with this version 5. And Simon and I, in preparation of this session, we're just like, oh, we hope that this gets updated
Yes.
right before build, or just like at build, so that we can just like show all of the goodness that version 5 provides to developers. And our dreams came true. So super proudly presenting today version 5. And if you are still on a previous version, then it should be easy to update the projects and to use the version 5, because this will really advance you even more.
Yeah, that's right. And it you know, just sort of actually the process we've been going through, and you know, we started this talk on the older version, and you can see that there's a lot more similarities, like the different projects or the different templates have the same structure. So the tab app has a similar structure to the bot app, which was different in the version 4. So that's great. You've got that continuity, that consistency across the templates, which makes it a bit easier as you know. So you know where things should live and how it should work. You're not having to relearn for all the different types of Teams apps that you're building. So that's fantastic.
It just means you just like feel immediately more at home, even if you never explored that template before. And that for me is just like a super good experience, because I easily get lost. So I can get lost in a supermarket. So literally, I have no sense of direction or orientation. So if something just like already looks familiar when I develop apps and I know the structure and I recognize that makes it way easier for me, because I don't need to focus on, oh my God, where's what again, and where does what live and what is it good for? Because yet again, this is just like scaffolding the entire project for me. So I should be understanding what is going on. But I do not need to write all of this on my own. But it is a very good idea that they really streamlined this, and that they that we now have this consistency across the templates, and they really put in some big love for that. So I'm excited to show you. Excellent.
So, you know, I think we need to move forward a bit. We've got some good content. We need to show it all. So, we are going to, you know, what do we need to build a bot then?
So much. So first, of course, you will need to have a web server to host and run the bot code. And then you will need to have the Azure Bot Service Bot to make it available to Teams. So that's the second thing. Then the third thing is you will need to register an app in Azure Active Directory to register the bot within the Microsoft Cloud. So you need to give it an identity, because so right now it does not have an identity. And so this needs to happen, and it needs to happen in Azure Active Directory. And then you will need to have an HTTP tunnel service to supply just like a publicly accessible URL to your local endpoint. Because so right now you're just like in Visual Studio Code and you want to talk directly to Teams, so you need to tunnel that so that you can talk to Teams. And of course there are services for that, and I think I'm allowed to say this. So most people were just like using ngrok, and there is a free version and there is a paid version, and the free version has this super inconvenient quirk that the URL that always changes. And you constantly need to update this. And I can't tell you how often I forgot to update this, even though I knew that I needed to do that. And then I was just like, so why is that not working again? Because it worked before. So it worked 5 minutes ago, and then it stops working. And although I knew, and this is just like, this is slowing down my development process, and this is frustrating, and I don't really like that. So so, but we need that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a big benefit, isn't it? And you know, there are, I think there's 3 different services you can use. You can use Dev Tunnels, which is the Microsoft one, as well local tunnels, which I haven't used. Yeah, and ngrok still, though, if you want to use ngrok. Oh, go on, sorry, was it on the final part of it?
Final part, the Teams app package to deploy the bot to Teams. And this is the manifest file, and it's 2 images to show an icon correctly. And that manifest file, again, tells Microsoft Teams, hey, what is that app about? What's its name? So where are all the IDs that we need? But it does not host any code for the app. It's just the metadata for the app.
Yeah. Brilliant. We'll show you that in a bit more detail when we get to the demo.
So now let's make things a little bit more simple. Instead of just like me having to do all of these things, just like registering the app and creating the tunnel service and setting up the Azure bot service and so on and so forth, and creating the manifest file by myself. And then just like dealing with the images, it would be super nice to install Teams Toolkit, because that verifies and installs all prerequisites. So I don't need to install anything anymore manually, but it will take care of that so that I have everything installed on my machine to create apps for Teams.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you get the right version of Node. It makes sure you've got your M365 account. Yeah, that's great.
Second thing is it already starts an instance of a tunnel service, so I don't need to deal with that at all, and I have no changing URLs whatsoever. So it just works experience, which I really like.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing, the fact that it just configures all of that. It's just great.
Yeah, so then it creates the Azure ID app registration for you and sets all the permissions that you need. And this is really a good thing, because yet again, you don't need to take care of that anymore. You do not need to switch context anymore, and then just like open your browser and go to the Azure portal and find the app registration and do all the things and take note of all the values that we need, just like the tenant ID and app ID and app secrets. So you don't need to do this anymore, but it does that for you. Next up.
Next one.
Oh yeah. It creates an Azure bot service registration, and I feel like, so you mentioned that earlier, right? So you forgot at some point to do that, right, Simon?
Yeah. So I forgot to change the URL that it was using to point to the HTTP endpoint. You know, and I spent I lost a lot of time. And it's just like one thing, you know, exactly the same. Oh, it was working a minute ago, but it's not now.
Yeah. And then, of course, it compiles the bot code and starts a local web server, so that we don't need to do this, I don't know, from the terminal anymore, which is super cool. And it creates the Teams app package. So it creates my manifest file, and it gives me also the 2 images that I need for Teams. And then it deploys that app package to Teams. So I don't even need to just like go to Teams anymore and sideload this. It does that automatically for me, which means I don't need to go just like here and there, just like open the 10th portal of today and just like do that. But this is automatically done for me, and I like that.
And I love the fact that it doesn't, you know, it takes you into a browser where it's going to log you in with the M365 account that you've used in the tool, you know, you've told the toolkit about. So, you know, you don't have this thing where it doesn't work because it's gone into a tenant which it doesn't have access to. And that's fantastic. Yeah. And then finally it starts the session. So
it starts the session, and so we call this the F5 experience, that once you have this simplified setup done, that you can just like press F5, and this opens a browser window, goes to the web client, and displays the app installation dialog. And that means you can now work on your code. And this is just like all these steps are done for you, and you can focus on what you want to focus on, and you do not need to have all of this hassle of just like the gazillion of services that we need for the bot.
Cool. And so so this is the part where, you know, we're talking about this other system proactively telling the support engineer, you know, this event has happened, and we're just, you know, in the learn module, this is achieved using an HTTP post request, which is I'm going to send it's going to call a endpoint notification endpoint, which is running on this local web server. So this is how we're going to trigger the activity. So adaptive cards. They're getting a lot of love at the moment, actually, adaptive cards.
They do get a lot of love for a reason. So if you never ever tried adaptive cards, they are amazing. Why are they adaptive? Because so they are authored in JSON. They automatically adapt to the host application with their look and feel. This is why they're called adaptive cards. And if I run them in Outlook, they look and feel like Outlook. And if I run them in Teams, they look and feel like Teams. And I, as a developer, do not need to take care of the design of a UI component because it just like looks right. It is theme aware. It's just like, it is a dream. And of course, these notifications and messages, they display information where the user is. And the user is already in Teams, and they enrich experiences, and users can take action from within the card, just like updating something or giving an input or confirming something, and just like doing all the CRUD operations that they need to do without leaving the context of their work, and by staying in the flow of their work. And this is just like pretty amazing. And this is why we want you to send those cards instead of just like sending a message.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we were talking about this, because building them can be, especially when you're sort of building new ones, it can be quite difficult. The JSON, it takes a bit of time to kind of get comfortable with it. You pointed us to a couple of resources, and you said, "Oh, Simon, have you seen this?" I can't remember, what was the resource. There's a Visual Studio Code extension, wasn't it?
Yeah. So of course you have several options. So if you feel familiar with that, so yes, you can just like write this in Notepad, but there is no reason for making things harder than they are. So if you're more just like a browser person, you can go to adaptivecards.io/designer, and there's just like a clicky, draggy, droppy visual experience to do that. If you're more like VS Code inclined, and we hope you are, because Teams Toolkit is a VS Code extension as well. And there is an adaptive cards extension for VS Code, which gives you a nice preview. So it renders the card automatically for you in the sidebar, and you can just like focus on the JSON code that you're writing. And this is a pretty amazing experience. Also, there are just like so many templates that you can just like learn from, or just like use them as a good starting point, and then just like tweak them to their needs.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that Adaptive Card Studio, it's really, really smart. I started using it. Cool. Okay, so we just, this is sort of the Debug F5. This is from the Teams Toolkit wiki. We'll get a link posted on the chat. But this is the process which we talked about in an earlier slide, but you just sort of see what it's doing and where the activities are happening. We've got those swim lanes at the top with the launch.json, task.json, and the tmount.local.yaml. So we hit F5. We've got that validation of the node version. Have we got we logged into an M365 account? If we're not, we're going to get prompted to log in. And then there's this provision task, which if it's a bot, then it's going to start local tunnel. If it's this then provision task, and depending on what it is that's being built, what type of app, then we might be creating Azure AD apps and Azure bot services. We threw that into the deployment, creating that team app package, and then deploying that and starting the application up, firing up the browser so that we can then install the app into Teams. So
show us some code.
Yes, I was going to say, I think I was looking at the time, so let me bring it across my Visual Studio. So hopefully you can see my Visual Studio code. We've got the Teams Toolkit already installed. If we didn't have it, then we could search up here for Teams, and we would have the ability to install it here, but it's across here on the left-hand side. There's loads of documentation, there's how-to guides, there's a lot of information here about how to take your bot from where it's, once you've scaffolded that first app onto something else. So explore that. But there's a lot of great documentation. There's samples in here as well. So there's lots of different types of bots. So use those for inspiration and seeing what you can do. Have a play. What we're going to do in this one is we're going to create a new app. Because we're creating a bot, we're going to choose bot, and then we're going to want a chat notification message. We are in this example using an Azure function because we love Azure, so we're going to have an Azure function as our endpoint that's going to trigger that message. So that's going to be the thing which we call. I've got options, and in the tutorial we've asked to use JavaScript. I would generally go TypeScript, but I will do as I'm told. And I guess it's more accessible to a wider audience. I'm going to just browse because I have this thing about using small folder paths. I've just been bitten over the years, so I always have a cdev. So I'm going to select that, and then we need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it support ticket alerts and hit enter. And it's going to go off and scaffold up this application. And I'm just going to actually just start it running so that we can get all that going. And I'll talk through the structure of what we've got. So first of all, we get a great README, and it just explains a bit about this template, what versions of Node. So those are the prerequisites, that we've got a 365 account for development. And interestingly, if you are sort of new to Microsoft 365 development and you're wanting to get involved, you don't have to spend money. Microsoft will allow you to provision a developer tenant so that you get really a decent license, so that you can really start to learn and understand how these things work. So if you haven't got one of those, then please click on that link. Exactly.
Get a developer tenant. So if there's only one takeaway from the session, get a developer tenant.
Definitely. We've got if you remember those swim lanes, this is where those files are living, and it's the launch.json is how the debug process, and you can could customize this if you wanted to. You just notice that it's got all these nice tokens in here, so it's going to use those to replace that URL, so it fires up the right place. And we've got various settings, and then under the hood is this Teams FX, which then describes all the tasks. If you come from sort of kind of Gulp and SPFX, and it looks kind of similar. You've got these dependencies, but this is where the magic happens, where it starts, checking those prerequisites, starting the local tunnel. You can, if you don't like that port, you can change that port. We've got things here where it's updating environment files and using those variables throughout. So you can see it's pretty quick. It's now just kind of finished compiling and doing all the work. So it's set up. But let's just continue going through this the layout of this of this project. So our app package folder, we've got, as Luise was talking about, the different icons in there. We've got a manifest JSONs in there, and again, it's got the tokens which are going to get replaced. We can change the developer name and give links to the website as we could with Teams apps before. What's really nice, I like, is how it you have different environments in Teams Toolkit, and it adds that environment name, so that kind of can help as you're building your applications and moving it through the different environments from dev into production.
And I mean, it is less than a minute, and we have the entire project in VS Code, and what we needed to do is just select the right template and hit enter. I mean,
yeah,
how easy can it speed.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
it is.
like so. It's just like it is mind blowing for me, and yeah, love it.
Yeah, and this is important as well. Like, it's something I'm going to pick out in this environment folder. So this is where you get different environment files for your different environments. So we've got a dev and a local environment, and in here are where your environment variables get set, which you can change, and those are then used through your application. But the one I just want to call out here, because you want to know about this a little bit later, is .envilocal.user, and this is an example of that, as Scott Goo talks about, the falling in the pit of success, where this file, you should store your secrets in here, because this file is ignored by Git, and it doesn't get uploaded into your repositories. And the amount of, especially when Git was new, the amount of times you would hear about secrets, passwords being accidentally uploaded into Git repos, and this is just helps stop that from happening. And you can see here that we've got that file mask there, which is going to stop that from happening. I'm a massive DevOps. I love DevOps. I think it's really good, again, for mental health. But in here, we've got the right thing.
Avoids the Friday afternoon emergency calls, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I was chatting earlier to another MVP, and we just talking about how you can, if you've got your DevOps working, then you can sort of do deployments, from your phone. It's just, it makes things so much easier, and you've got so much more confidence in that it's going to deploy successfully. But we've got Bicep and in here, we've got our Bicep files. So we've got our function app and our blob storage all being described here, and then this calls into this Azure bot Bicep and pass in. And look, there's that one. That's the one that I always used to forget about, the endpoint. So that gets updated there as well. So that's great. And then it's nice here that you've got the parameters here which are being passed in. So it's all nicely described. Interesting. That's a B1, but anyway. So and then after that, we've got our sort of Azure functions here. And I'll just sort of rush through these. And then in here is where all our source code is, with our Teams bot, our trigger, which we're going to, I think it's which is described by this function.json, which is then going to go off and do our create our adaptive card, and we can see our adaptive card in here. That lovely JSON there. So yeah. Those are the kind of the main areas of the project. So I'm just going to I have to log in. So let me just I'll show you the experience as we need to install this app. So let's just grab my password. And we'll get signed in. So the Teams app is going to get installed. You can see up here that it's got this install app package. We've got this login hint, so we know it's going to log into the right tenant, and we're going to get taken to the apps app, and eventually we'll get that add button.
Drum rolls.
Yes. Here we go.
So we can already see the modal window. We will be adding our support tickets, alerts, -local, because right now tunneling.
So there we go. So here it is. It's there. It's up and running, and we need to tell it to to put in. We've got this alert that's coming from this system. You can use curl, of course. I'm a Windows developer, so I'm going to use invoke web request. So,
but whatever floats your boat. It's just like
exactly.
We just need to trigger that. It's not important.
No, exactly. And then there we go.
New event.
Yeah, and it's nice, and you've got buttons to and all sorts of nice features to an adaptive card. And I'm just looking at time, so I think we need to move on to the next part.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so in this exercise, we create a bot, we run and debugged it, and we triggered a proactive message. So I hope you get some time and do that, or I hope you were able to do that while we were going through it. So on to the next one.
Let's build a tab, right?
Yes. So
yeah.
In this, we're going to describe the basics of a Teams tab app. We're not going to talk, well, we can talk a little bit about the benefits, but they're sort of similar to the bots already. So let's go into this a bit more. So why would we want to use a tab app?
Well, of course, the right content within the right context, so that I do not need to leave Teams. So that is, like always, the purpose of a tab application, and it's a good idea to incorporate just like more data into Teams, and that's what we'll be doing now.
Yeah. So in this scenario, you know, we're the support engineer. We've been assigned a project to build an app for the support engineers in our team to manage all these customer support tickets. So it's extending that proactive messaging notification bot, which might open up a support ticket. And we want to have an application within Teams in our flow of work to allow us to work on and close and manage those support tickets. So in this, we're going to build a Microsoft Teams tab app. And what is a tab app? Go for it.
No, yet again, it is a web page that you host somewhere. Azure is a very good option. I might be biased yet again. I might be biased, but of course we need to have the manifest file again to just like let Teams know where is it and what shall it display, and we can of course use again Teams Toolkit to let this be handled for us, so that we do not need to write this, but can just like focus on the website instead of all the other things that are moving around.
Yeah,
and as you can see on this slide, so we have this Teams app.local.yaml, and this is just like for all the lifecycle and action required for debugging. And then we have the source, and that contains all the code for your tab, be it just scripts and styling file and the code for the UI of your app. And then we have the app package, so the manifest file and the two icons, the color and the outline.png.
Yeah, and this is this is the bit which has changed. There's quite different. The layout used to have a tab folder for your tab app, and there was an FX folder for where all your all the lifecycle actions used to live. So it has changed. Again, we've got the same Debug F5 experience. This is exactly the same image as before. So we've got all that, great way of getting up and running quickly. So again, it's going to do the validation of prerequisites. In this example, we're not a bot, so it's not going to start a local tunnel, but it's still going to go off and do any provisioning that it needs to, and then build that Teams app and deploy that Teams app. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Show us code.
Okay, let's do it.
We want code.
So I'm going to just close this folder and I'll start again. So again, from the Teams Toolkit, we're going to create a new app, and you can see there are a number of different options here. So, we've now got as part of version 5 this Outlook add-in, and I hear a rumor that you're going to get a Copilot plugin is going to be added here at some point as well. That's one of the announcements which came out today. So yeah, great. We'll be able to build those using the toolkit. So I'm going to choose a tab app. And I'm going to go for a basic one this time. But also interesting that you've got SharePoint Framework. I know that in discussions I've had with other developers, coming from a SharePoint background, does using the Teams Toolkit mean that SharePoint Framework we can't still use that? No, it's not. It's you're just you're not losing anything. You're able to build on those SharePoint Framework solutions as well with Teams Toolkit. You're not going to lose all that investment that you've made.
Yes, this is the better together story.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
Right, so we're going to select the same folder. We're going to remind ourselves what the name of the application. So it's going to be Customer Ticketing Tool, and we're going to enter to provision this project, and it's even faster this time. And as we said,
It is incredible.
Yeah, again, it is really quick. And if we just start the debugging process. This again, we've got the same README. Interesting that now in this one it does actually say give a link to the M365 developer program, which is great. You've got those prerequisites. We've got this, the same folder structure. If we look at our manifest, remember last time we had a lot in the bots area, so that's gone because we're building a tab app, and this time now we've got the static tabs array there, and that's going to be used to tell teams where to look to load up these websites. We've got our different environments here, with a lot less in the environment local.use. It's got nothing but just this last time the Teams app was updated. We've got our infrastructure. We don't have the bot area this time. But we've got the Azure Bicep, which is going to get our app service plan and our web app and our app service set up, and it's been good to us this time. We're just using the free tier this time, so nice and cheap on this one. And then in here is where all our source code is, and we have got our local web server, and then our this is what's going to end up being displayed in our tab. So I think while that was going, we're up and running already. So just now.
I mean, it is so fast and it became so easy. And when I just look back, how often I needed to just tweak things and register things and get things up and running, it is mind blowing to me.
Yes, that's right. I have notice once we've got this up and running, and so it's going to go and install the app again as we saw before. Let's just make this a bit bigger so everyone can see that. Because we're using HTML to display this tab, we don't have, in this example, we don't have the hot refresh, which we should. And what I'll probably do is just put a post on afterwards about how you can fix that, because we're going to need to move on to our last slides. But we're going to click on add. We're going to install the customer ticketing tool in here, and we're going to get a new tab on the left hand side, and yeah, there we go. We've got hello world. Your app is running in Teams, and you can see in here, if we save that we should have that automatically hot refresh, but it doesn't. But yeah, you can see now hello build. So yeah, there we go. Right. Okay, so in this we created a Teams tab app, and we tested and we debugged it, and we showed you kind of how you can change it, and we'll get that the instructions on how to get that auto reload working properly for HTML files.
I want to do a quick knowledge check with people. So can you display our questions? So I want to know why would you want to use an environment .user file, e.g. in env.dev.user source secrets, and that you do not want to commit to source control, to store the configuration settings of the user using your Microsoft Teams applications, to read the environment variables available for the application when debugging locally. And yes, this is system generated file, so there is no reason to use this file. And you can vote at aka.ms/pulse-b.
Cool. Yeah, they're coming in hot and fast now.
Yes.
So we've got.
So I think we will skip question number 2 to wrap things up.
I think so. Yes. So do you know what? Interesting. So the answer was that we don't want to store those secrets, and commit them to source control. So it's a well done to those who went for A. Okay, and we're going to. Right. So, in summary.
use
we've
Teams
learned.
Toolkit for Visual Studio Code to build bots, to create apps for Teams, and to send adaptive cards to Teams really became easier. You also learned how to describe the basics of Teams Teams tab apps, and of course of bots as well. And you know how to create a debug session for a Teams tab and a Teams bot for Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code.
Yeah. So we hope you get, here's some links to some resources. We hope you've learned something and you can try these things out and get involved. And here's some links to the resources for those 2 sessions. And there we go. There's links to the 2 modules. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the build.